Hi guys, good morning. So we'll have one last time on Kripke's naming and necessity today, and then on Friday we'll do Putnam's thing in the reader. Okay. So I want to start out with just a kind of workout, a very gentle workout on necessary and a priori, and then we'll look at some kind of interesting things Kripke says about the mind-body problem. How these topics bear in the mind-body problem. As I said, although we're looking at quite narrow kind of technical things a lot of the time, right next to everything we look at are these momentous philosophical questions. And one we'll glimpse today is the mind-body problem. What you say about these very narrow questions usually has very far-reaching implications for other philosophical issues. So let's start out. Necessary, true in all possible worlds. A priori, you can know it otherwise than on the basis of experience. That's all right? Each of these seems okay? They seem different. Do they seem different? So if you have our old friend's possible worlds here, and this is being only a small sample, then if something's necessary, it's true in all possible worlds. Yes? Hi. So if it's a priori, you have to look to see whether it's true, right? But suppose something's true in some worlds, but not in others. So it's not necessary, right? It is contingent. Would you have to look to see whether it's true? Why? You don't know.
If it's always true.
You don't know if it's always true, right? It's not always true. Let's suppose it's not true in every world. So for all you know, your world might be the one which is not true. Yeah. If you see what I mean. Yeah. So in the face of it, you're going to have to look to see whether it's true. If it's not necessary. So not necessary means not a priori. Yeah. Follow me very closely here. On the other hand, if it's a priori, that means you can know without looking that it's true. So if it's a priori, must it be necessary? Why not? If it's a priori, you can know without looking that it's true. If there were some world in which it wasn't true, if there's some world which is not true, then for all you know, that world could be your actual world until you look and see that the actual world is not that one. You see what I mean? So on the face of it, necessary and a priori look like they must be very closely related. Yeah? And in fact, a priori and analytic seem to be pretty closely related because it's very natural to think, well, the reason something would be a priori is that you know it to be true just if you know what the words mean. Yes? And if this structure of possible worlds is a little bit weird, right? I mean, what are we talking about? It's natural to talk this way. Everyone who thinks about necessity and possibility does think in this way. But what does it mean? Are there really all these little worlds out there? A natural way to think of it is that necessity is to be explained in terms of a prioricity, and a prioricity is to be explained in terms of analyticity. Yeah, that what grounds talk about necessity is talk about meaning. So it's a very comfortable package there. And the thing about what we've done so far is that Kripke's stuff just blows that up. None of these ideas I just expressed can be right. Watch me very closely here. Suppose you take... Follow me like a leopard. Every move is important. Suppose you take Hesperus is Hesperus. Is that necessary? Go on, class, is that necessary? Hesperus is Hesperus. You suspect a trap. What? How could... that wasn't a trap. Hesperus, yes? I agree. In another possible world, the name Hesperus could refer to something else. Yeah, is that what you guys are thinking? Yeah. No, what were you thinking? You what?
I guess so.
Okay, okay, well, come back. What that thing at the top is saying, though, is not that the planet Hesperus might not have been named Hesperus. It's saying of Hesperus itself. That is Hesperus. That is that very object, Hesperus. You see what I mean? It's not talking about names. It's talking about the objects, Hesperus and Hesperus. And it's saying, take that one object, Hesperus. That's the same as itself. Is that necessary? Yeah, I mean, how, it has to, I mean, there aren't enough of them there, if you see what I mean, to say in some other world the two of them pull apart. How could they pull apart? You see what I mean? There's only one thing there. Yeah? If Hesperus is Hesperus, then it's necessary that Hesperus is Hesperus. Okay? Another way to see it is to say, well, look, is Hesperus a rigid designator? That's to say, when I say, if Hesperus had been less bright, or if Hesperus had collided with a meteor, or if Hesperus had been consumed by a star, yeah, am I still talking about the same object, Hesperus? Yes, I'm still talking about, that was what we said, right? Rigid designation. Yes? Every individual move here is very, very simple, right? There's no trap in any move. So if you've got a rigid designator here on the left, Hesperus, and a rigid designator here on the right, Phosphorus, then these two names, in every world you like, each of them designates the same thing that they do in the actual world. So in every possible world they designate the same thing. So if in every possible world they're designating the same thing, is it necessary that Hesperus is Phosphorus? Well, necessary means it's true in all possible worlds. But in all possible worlds they're designating the same thing. So it's necessary that Hesperus is Hesperus. I don't think this is a great discovery, but we're just going, I said this was a gentle workout, right? Do you want to come back on that? Have I put everyone's reservations to rest? Will you give me that this is necessary? Hesperus is Hesperus. Okay, can you put your hand up if you're happy with that? Okay, and if you're not happy? Okay, and if you don't know what the question is? Did you give your hand up there? Okay, right. Okay, very good, very good. Okay, well, okay. Having warmed up a little bit, what about Hesperus is Phosphorus? Are Hesperus and Phosphorus, are these two names rigid designators? Each of them designates the same thing in every possible world, right? So if you're talking about what would have happened if Hesperus had collided with another planet, you're talking about the same thing. The name Hesperus just grabs onto that thing and talks about that thing in every possible state of affairs. When you're talking about what would have happened if Phosphorus had collided with a planet, you're using that name to Phosphorus to glom onto the same thing and talk about it in every possible situation. That's all right? But if they're both rigid designators, and it's true that Hesperus is Phosphorus, then is it true in every possible world that Hesperus is Phosphorus? Yes, because they each designate the same thing in every world, right? So how could they, I mean, there's only one thing there, if you see what I mean. So it's got to be necessary. So it's necessary that Hesperus is Phosphorus. But watch me very closely here. Is it a priori that Hesperus is Phosphorus? No, it is not a priori. Right? That was an astronomical discovery, that Hesperus is Phosphorus. So it's necessary, but it's not a priori. How can that be? If it's true in every single world, how come you have to look? Isn't that weird? That is weird. I mean, what's going on? How come you have to look if it's true in every possible world? But it is true in every possible world, and you do have to look. That just seems to be the fact. Okay. Suppose we spread out a bit. Suppose you take heat. Is that a rigid designator? If I say, if there had been no such phenomenon as heat, well, if there had been no such phenomenon as heat, if heat had been applied uniformly to everything involved in the Big Bang, then things would be very different now today, right? There, heat, I'm talking about the same phenomenon back then at the Big Bang as I'm talking about now, right? It's rigid. It gloms onto the phenomenon heat and talks about it in different possible situations. Motion of molecules. Well, motion of molecules is motion of molecules. If I say if motion of molecules had been uniformly faster throughout the universe than it is now, then things would be very different. You're talking about the same phenomenon in all these different situations. So these are both rigid designators. So this is true, it's necessary, but it's not a priori. Pain. If pain had been the universal condition of the human species, or if pain had not been the universal condition of the human species, I'm still talking about the same thing in every world. C fiber firing, that brain condition thought to underlie pain. If C fiber firing had never existed in humans, well, I'm still talking about the same thing in every possible situation. So these are both rigid designators. So if pain is C fiber firing, it's necessary, but it's not a priori. Yep. This is just a kind of warm-up. So, okay. So, since Hesperus is rigid and Phosphorus is rigid, Hesperus's phosphorus is necessary, but not a priori. Okay. One last exercise. Suppose we introduce Bright as the name of the inventor of the wheel. Okay. So I just say here's a description: the inventor of the wheel. Yep. And I say, we'll give that whoever invented the wheel a name, Bright. Bright must have known about roads, you might say. Okay? Bright must have been pretty bright, for example. Is Bright a rigid designator? Yes, I mean, you could say Bright could have been crushed at birth. Yeah? You're still talking about that same person in all these other worlds. The history of the human race would have been very different if Bright had been crushed at birth. Yeah? Bright, you might say, was almost certainly a woman, and a great woman. And if Bright had never appeared, then it would have taken centuries for progress to be made in human civilization. Yep.
Question: if the person who invented the wheel is Bright, then if Bright was killed and the other person took his idea, would that person be considered Bright?
If someone else invented the wheel.
Like he had the concept, but someone else took it.
Yes, right. If Bright stole the credit for inventing the wheel from someone else, yes, that's what you mean. That's a great idea. I don't mean that to work. What I mean is, I'm trying to get Bright to be used just as the inventor of the wheel, the true inventor of the wheel, whoever that is. Yeah. So that when I do speculations like Bright must have been very smart, or Bright must have had the concept of a road, yeah, then I'm not talking about whoever's got the credit for it. I really mean to be talking about whoever really did the thing. Yep. Yeah. So, yeah, but that's good. This is different to names like Shakespeare or Gödel.
Okay.
Yeah. So the inventor of the wheel changes his reference in different worlds. But Bright is a rigid designator. So is it necessary that Bright is the inventor of the wheel? No, there are other possible worlds in which someone else got there first. Yeah, or in which Bright was crushed at birth. Yep. Is it a priori that Bright invented the wheel? Look, there's nothing hidden here, right? This is the whole thing, right? I just said Bright is my name for whoever it is that truly invented the wheel. So did Bright invent, so this is just an exercise class. Did Bright invent the wheel? Yes, there's no question about that, right? And does anyone want to say, no, Bright did not invent the wheel? Bright stole the credit. I mean, that's kind of like that. I mean, if you did do that, that would be kind of like the thing where the maths teacher says, let n be the number of cows in the field. And someone pops up and says, but sir, suppose n is not the number of cows in the field. I just laid it down, right? Bright is the inventor of the wheel. Okay, so that's a priori, but contingent, because it's not true in every possible world. Isn't that weird? Yep. What if there was no one inventor of the wheel? Right, then Bright would not exist. Very good. Is a priori that if any one person invented the wheel, then it was Bright? Yeah, so you're perfectly right. I have to qualify it to say that, right? Yes, 1, 2. Yeah.
Would it be that if in all the possible worlds in which any one person invents the wheel, we're going to call that person Bright? Does that mean it's necessary?
That would mean it was necessary if the term worked like that, but that's not the way it's working. What I'm saying is, I introduce the term Bright like that, yeah? And then I say, suppose someone else had got there first, yeah? Then Bright would not have been the inventor of the wheel. That makes perfect sense, yeah? So it's not as if in some other possible world, the description, the inventor of the wheel, always applies to the same thing that Bright picks out. Yeah.
So, but if we go back to the case of like pain is C5.
Yes, pain is C5 firing.
Heat is the motion of molecules. Why do they necessarily have? Why do they have to be necessary? Couldn't you just say that those phenomena had a different mechanism?
Those phenomena had a different mechanism. Yeah. Well, the question is which phenomena, right? I mean, suppose heat just is motion of molecules, right? That's what physics seems to tell us.
It says a lot of things, though. I mean, there's been different models of heat. I mean, like now, that might not be necessarily the most prevalent.
Yeah, it might not be actually true that heat is motion of molecules, right? The physicists might come back and say, actually, we're sorry, we got it wrong again. Yeah, that could happen. But the thing is, suppose that, well, the question is heat a rigid designator? And is motion of molecules a rigid designator? What I was suggesting was that they are. Yeah. So if they're both rigid designators, and I agree that it might turn out not to be true, but let's suppose it is true that heat is motion of molecules, then it isn't necessary that heat is motion of molecules. If it's just one phenomenon there, no, I'm not defining heat as motion of molecules. You could, but I'm not. That's not the way it's working here. The thing is, well, there are two things. Inventing the wheel is flexible. Yep. That designates someone different in different possible situations. But motion of molecules does not seem to be flexible. Motion of molecules is motion of molecules. You see what I mean? I mean, molecules are molecules and motion is motion. You're right, there is something a little bit surprising about this, given that this looks kind of like a description. But the thing is, although what I said was a description picks out things by their role, and different things can play that role in different possible situations. Sometimes when you're specifying a role, you specify a role that only one thing can play in any possible situation. So, I mean, if I identified a number as the number in between 2 and 4, yeah, then that's a definite description, all right. That specifies a number by its role. But there's only one thing that can play that role. So long as... Yes. we only do arithmetic in this class. Right? I mean, in this class, we only do the natural numbers, okay? And we only add, right? Okay. So setting that aside. But you see what I mean? Sometimes the role you can be picking out something by is what makes that thing the thing it is. So in any world in which you find something that's playing that role, it's got to be the same thing. And that's what I'm saying about motion of molecules or C-fiber firing. Yeah, C-fiber firing just picks out the same phenomenon in every world. Yeah, unlike the inventor of the wheel.
They seem like they're a bit, so we want to say they're both rigid designators, right?
Right.
It kind of seems like Hesperus is picking out a different sort of thing to what he picks out. So that, like, you can point at Hesperus.
That's right.
Really point at heat.
That's right too. Yeah. I mean, you can't literally point at something that's hot, but yeah, I think I see what you mean. Yeah. That's all right. There are differences between them. I don't disagree with that for a minute. All I want to get over is these look necessary, though a posteriori, in just the same way as Hesperus is Phosphorus. So it's not a special phenomenon about just names like Hesperus and Phosphorus. It seems to apply to names of properties too. Yeah? Yeah. Okay, we'll spend some time in this. Yep.
I actually have a question for you. Were you trying to say that the motion of molecules is not a rigid designator, or are you trying to say the statement heat is motion of molecules might turn out to be false?
I guess I ended up asking both the questions. I'm not pretty sure whether either of them are necessarily true.
Yeah, I didn't know like what you. I just wanted to make sure like what I understood what you're saying, and you were trying to say heat is not a rigid designator, or.
I kind of thought that it seemed like you could, so if you wanted to say that heat was a rigid designator, it did seem like you could say that heat was something else than motion of molecules.
Yeah, so if this statement can turn out to be false, but what we are, I guess, Professor is trying to say here is that the identity between two rigid designators, the true value is necessary. It could be false, like maybe I'm wrong to say heat is me, then I will be wrong, but the true value is necessary. Like it will be necessarily false.
You put it better than I did. Yeah, that's exactly what I was after. Yeah, right. Okay, we're going to. Is that? Sorry, was that your main point? No, I think that's terrific. That's exactly what I was after. Yeah. Okay, well, let's spend a little bit more time on this. Okay, this was just a kind of workout. You're all happy with that? Yeah. Okay. So it was really surprising, Kirk's result, right? That there are all these statements that people had long classified as contingent that turn out to be necessary. Once you get these basic points, water is H2O, lightning is discharge of electricity, heat is motion of molecules, gold is a substance with atomic number 79, pain is C-fiber firing. All these terms are rigid, right? When you talk about water in different possible situations, if water had been on the moon, for example, you're using that rigidly. You're just glomming onto the substance and talking about it in different possible situations. And similarly for H2O, if H2O, you're just glomming onto the same thing. So these descriptions, and this is like at the same point we were just discussing, some descriptions designating substances are rigid. When you say the substance with atomic number 79, that's a role, but having atomic number 79. But you couldn't have different substances in different situations having atomic number 79. If something has atomic number 79, that's kind of like being the number between 2 and 4. It's the same thing. That's what makes it a particular substance, that it's at that spot in the periodic table. But people say, as the last question I was saying, you can say, well, it could have turned out that gold could have been the substance with atomic number 79. Yeah, we might have found out, no, gold actually has atomic number 34. You didn't know in advance. You might have turned out that there was no such thing as atomic number. It could have turned out that Hesperus was not Phosphorus. Yeah? So that makes it look like it's contingent. You see, these things are not really necessary because they could have turned out otherwise. But Grimke's idea is these are illusions of contingency. It can look like things are true in some possible worlds but not others, through a kind of, okay, this is really important, this, watch out. This really bears centrally on the mind-body problem. And I know this is kind of technical at the moment, but it really is key to current arguments about the relation between mind and body. So bear with me a second. How does an illusion of contingency happen? The idea is, it could be, you might say, surely it's contingent that the Hesperus is phosphorus, because it could have turned out that the Hesperus was not phosphorus. Well, that's to say, if this is the visual impression you get of Hesperus in the morning, right? Suppose that's the visual impression you get of Hesperus in the morning, and suppose this is the visual impression you get, there it is up there, right, of Hesperus in the evening. There really could have been two different objects, one of which presented that appearance and the other of which presented that appearance. And there could have been two different things. Yeah? So two distinct bodies might have occupied in the morning and in the evening, respectively, the very positions actually occupied by Hesperus, Phosphorus, Venus. Yeah? It could be two different things there. So that could have happened, but would that have been a case in which Hesperus was not phosphorus? No, this would have been a case in which at least one of these two objects was neither Hesperus nor phosphorus. You see what I mean? You can make sense of it being that Hesperus and therefore phosphorus is the one presenting this appearance in the morning, but it's something else looking like that in the evening. Or it could have been that neither Hesperus nor phosphorus existed. But it doesn't make sense to suppose that this one could be Hesperus and this one could be a different thing, phosphorus, because Hesperus and phosphorus refer to the same thing in every possible situation. So you could have had the same appearances with different objects presenting those appearances. That's right. And that's what produces this illusion of contingency. Is that all right? Yep.
I understand what you're saying, but I don't understand
Why it's true?
I guess
Okay.
if they are two different objects, why can't we call one Hesperus and the other Phosphorus?
You could call one Hesperus. You could give them the names Hesperus and Phosphorus. Yeah. But if you ask, would that one have been phosphorus? Well, no, because phosphorus is Venus, right? That would have been a different object that we might have named phosphorus. We might have named a different object than phosphorus, if you see what I mean. Yeah. All that's going on here is the appearances are the same, and the objects are being shuffled around under the appearances, if you see what I mean. Yeah. And that's what's making for the illusion of contingency. But when you talk about whether it's necessary that Hesperus is phosphorus, you're talking about the objects themselves. And if Hesperus and phosphorus, in fact, are just one object, then you can make no sense of the possibility that that object might somehow have been pulled into two, if you see what I mean, so that there's one here and one here. That's not what you're thinking, but that's what you'd have to be thinking to be getting that this could really be contingent. Yeah.
I think what convinces us that like our world is the real world, maybe in the real world Hesperus and Phosphorus are two different things.
That's right. That's completely correct. That it really could have turned out that what we called Hesperus was not phosphorus, right? What we're saying here is, assuming Hesperus is phosphorus, that's what I mean about supposing that the physicists are right about, where's it gone? Suppose the physicists are right about heat being motion of molecules. Suppose pain really is C-fiber firing. Suppose Hesperus really is phosphorus. Then can we make sense of the bare possibility that Hesperus might not have been phosphorus? And that's what I'm saying we can't do. Yeah. So everything you're saying is right, but I think it leaves intact the idea that it's necessary that Hesperus is phosphorus, but you can have this illusion of contingency because different objects could have been presenting the very same appearances. Yep.
Just quickly, are we saying that you can get the illusion because you don't necessarily know if it's true, a true statement?
That's right. The reason you don't necessarily know the true statement, the Hesperus is phosphorus, say, is that the very same appearances could have been presented by different objects. And that gives you the illusion of contingency. The same appearances, different objects, yeah. And even if you do know that the thing is true, you can still make sense of this scenario, different appearances being presented, that the very same appearances being presented by different objects. Yeah. Once you've got that contrast between the appearance and the object, you say, okay, now I see how there could be illusions of contingency. Yeah? Okay. Here's Kripke. Any necessary truth, whether a priori or a posteriori, could not have turned out otherwise. That's what it means, it's necessary, right? But in the case of some necessary a posteriori truths, we can say that under appropriate, qualitatively identical evidential situations, an appropriate corresponding qualitative statement might have been made. Right? That's to say, qualitatively, things could have looked like this, but it'd be different objects. Yep. The loose and inaccurate statement that gold might have turned out to be a compound, for example, and not have atomic number 79, should be replaced by the statement that it's logically possible that there should have been a compound with all the properties originally known to hold of gold. So the appearance that gold presented could have been presented by some different substance, could have been presented by some compound. Yeah? And that would be a situation that produces, you can imagine that situation, and that produces the illusion of contingency. You think it's not necessary that gold is atomic number 79 because it could have been a compound. Yeah, but that's not right. Gold couldn't have been a compound. It's just that you're imagining this situation in which the qualitative appearance of gold was presented by some other substance. Yeah? Okay. Heat is motion of molecules. You could have had a situation in which the sensations of heat were being generated in us by something other than motion of molecules, right? That doesn't mean that it's not necessary that heat is motion of molecules. Okay, but here's the point. Suppose you think, look, the mind just is the brain, right? That's a very popular idea. The mind is just the brain. So all mental states can be identified with some brain state or other. That again is a very popular idea. Yeah? So just take it for example that pain is C fiber firing. Okay, so we worked through this earlier, but if pain is C fiber firing, is that necessary? Yes, these are two rigid designators, right? But it seems like you can imagine pain not having been C fiber firing, right? I mean, you can imagine a world in which, I don't know, I feel pain, I feel anguish as I go through my life, right? We all feel suffering, right? Yes? We all suffer. Okay, just getting some fixed points. And then after my death, they open me up, and my God, his head is full of sawdust. No C fibers, no brain, just a lot of sawdust, right? That could happen, yeah? I mean, you can imagine that perfectly well. Or it could turn out that, I mean, scientists are always coming back and saying, actually, we're sorry, we made a mistake about that. Yeah. It could turn out that there were no C fibers at all, right? The brain just doesn't have C fibers, but people still feel pain. So you say, that's just like the case of Hesperus is phosphorus. You could have the appearance of pain in a different possible world, but if it's not C fiber firing, it's not pain. Right? Yep, 1, 2.
No, I was going to say it's just what's the what we were designating with terms dividing firing or pain or different things in this sort of illusion that we associate them together in the same way that Hesperus and Phosphorus are shown to us in different ways.
If pain is C fiber firing, then it would have to be necessary that pain is C fiber firing, right? I'm just saying how there could be an illusion of contingency. You'd have the appearance of pain and the appearance of C fiber firing, but it wouldn't actually be pain or C fiber firing that you were dealing with.
Right.
Yeah.
What you're designating by saying C fiber firing or pain is not the illusion of it not being the same thing. It's just an illusion to being misrepresented.
It's the same thing you're talking about. We've got to hold on to the rigidity here, right? When I say if pain had been, if C fiber firing had been, I'm always locking on to the same thing in every possible situation. Yeah, that's just a datum. So these are rigid designators, and the question is, how can we explain this illusion of contingency? Yeah. That it seems like you can imagine your head, all our heads turning out to be full of sawdust or silicon or, not C fibers anyway, and yet we still feel pain. So that seems like an illusion of contingency. That's the puzzle. Yep. Sorry, you had a question? Yes, you did. All right. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. You see the point then, that it looks like there are these illusions of contingency. You can perfectly well imagine pain without C fibers. That's what it seems like. But if you're using this model, what you'd have to be saying is, just as you can have the appearance of Hesperus without Hesperus being there, and just as you can have the appearance of phosphorus without phosphorus being there, you can have the appearance of C fibers without C fibers being there. And that's all right. But can you have the appearance of pain without pain being there?
Acting. Superhuman.
Sorry?
Acting or superhuman.
Acting more superhuman. That sentence needs a verb.
Basically, pretend you're in pain, like an appearance of pain, or you could experience no pain when being inflicted pain.
Well, it could be that there was no such thing as pain, right? People just don't experience pain. But that would be a world in which there was no pain. Yeah. If there is pain, yep.
Okay, so all these examples about sawdust being in your head or
Yeah.
a world without pain, like none of this weighs in on the case of necessity, right? Because every time we get back to talking about pain and C fibers, they're still always pointing out the same thing. Right?
That's right. That's right.
Okay, so that's how this is all illusion.
Well, the trouble with finding an illusion here is that the way the explanation of illusions of contingency works is that you could have the feeling of pain. You can imagine having the feeling of pain without having C fiber firing.
Right.
Yep.
That doesn't affect the term C fiber firing.
That's right. That would be the way it has to work.
Yeah.
The trouble is, for this explanation to work, the appearance of pain and pain itself have to be two different things. Just as the appearance of Hesperus and the Hesperus itself are two different things. So you can have the appearance of Hesperus without Hesperus. You could have the appearance of pain without pain. But the crux is, that makes no sense in this case. If it feels like pain, then it is pain. Yeah? So you can't have the same explanation of these illusions of contingency. 1 and 2. Yeah.
So this would also apply to heat as a motion of molecules. If we're talking about
Very good, yes.
Like the experience of heat and whatever mechanism that might occasion that experience, then it seems that if I'm having the appearance of pain, of heat or
Heat is motion, yeah.
experience of heat,
Yeah.
that is also just analogous to this pain as C fiber firing situation.
Yeah, well, there are two different things. There's the sensations of heat, and there's the objective phenomenon out there.
Right. So this is talking about the motion of molecules.
That's right, and it's the stuff out there that's being identified with the motion of molecules. So this goes back to an earlier question. The sensations of heat, you can imagine having the sensations of heat without any motion of molecules. That's all right, that's not a puzzle, because then you wouldn't have heat itself as being the cause of those sensations. You're describing a situation in which something other than heat is causing your sensations of heat. Yeah? But the thing about pain is you don't get a situation like that. Pain is the name for the feeling. Pain is the name for the sensation. Pain is the name for the appearance. You see what I mean? So you can't now differentiate between the appearance and the thing itself. We're trying to talk about the appearance. We're trying to talk about the feeling. So we can't explain illusions of contingency in the same way. Yep.
Just to follow up on what Jeremy said, so you were talking about it being possible to have the appearance of pain without pain, and you said, well, sure, 'cause somebody could like fake it, right? Like yell and scream and stuff. So I think that's right, but the idea here is that we're talking about the appearance of pain from the first person. So the appearance of pain is being used synonymously with.
Okay, I didn't pick that up. Okay, I didn't get that part of what you're saying, yeah. Yeah, so sure you could have the appearance of pain from a third person point of view if someone else is watching you. Is that what you mean, Melissa? Yeah. But does it feel to me like my pain? Could I have that without C fiber firing? And the thing is, it seems so compelling that it could. Yeah?
What about the case of phantom limbs?
Well, if a phantom limb feels like it's giving you pain, I mean, what's phantom is the limb. The pain's not phantom. You know, it really hurts. You see what I mean? You really get painkillers. You know, your doctor's not going to say, your insurance does not cover this because it's only a phantom pain. You know, I mean, you don't get painkillers for that because phantom pains don't exist, of course. You see what I mean? The pain's really there. So here's Kripke. In the case of molecular motion and heat, there is something, namely the sensation of heat. So that goes back to someone's question. There is something, namely the sensation of heat, which is an intermediary between the external phenomenon and the observer. In the mental physical case, no such intermediary is possible, since here the physical phenomenon is supposed to be identical with the internal phenomenon itself. What you're trying to identify is that internal thing, the appearance or the sensation of pain, with the C fiber firing. So the trouble is that notion of an epistemic situation qualitatively identical. That's what you've got with this case. You've got a situation that's epistemically qualitatively identical to the way things really look, but just different objects. You can't have that as an epistemic situation qualitatively identical to one in which the observer had a sensation S is simply one in which the observer has that sensation. So that goes back to that last question. If it feels like pain, then it just is pain. There's no difference between the presentation of pain and the pain itself. Pain is just the name for the presentation. So you can't make sense of keeping hold of the appearance but having the object shuffling around under it. And what that means is that if you say pain is C fiber firing, there's a strong sense that that's contingent. It could have been otherwise. It might have been that we were made in a different way, that we weren't made of C fibers at all, that we were made of sawdust or silicon or something. That seems so easily imaginable. And the fact that that's so easily imaginable can't be explained in the way that the imaginability of Hesperus and Phosphorus, seeming to be different things, can be explained. So really, this is a long vindication of Descartes' argument. Descartes said, the reason that the mind can't be the body is that I can clearly and distinctly understand the one thing apart from the other. I can imagine having been in a different body. I can imagine not having had a body at all. That was Descartes' classic, one of Descartes' classic arguments for dualism, for saying the mind cannot be a physical thing. And you see the idea there, right? I mean, you can imagine your own funeral. You can imagine looking down on all those sad, regretful faces following the horse-drawn carriage, and you look down and you say, by God, they're all sorry now. You know what I mean? They wish they'd treated me better. So that's you can imagine that, right? I can imagine that. So that's you without a body at all. And then if you want to say, oh, well, that's just an appearance of contingency there. That's a situation that's qualitatively like your current situation, but it's not really you there. But the thing is, me and my conscious world, there's no more to that than the way things seem to me. So if I can keep hold of that, this world of seemings, my internal conscious life, through variation in my physical body, and through not having a physical body at all, that just shows that I'm not identical to my body. That just shows that no conscious state of mind can be identical to any physical state of mind. Yeah? So that really is a powerful argument for dualism. So there you go, you start out with this stuff about Hesperus and Phosphorus and so on, and you wind up realizing that physicalism cannot possibly be true. Maybe we should stop on that bombshell. We're a couple of minutes early, but perhaps that's enough for one day. Okay, so we'll pick up with Putnam on Friday. Okay. Thanks, guys. Great questions.